And we are live, and welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. We have the beautiful Rachel all the way from Kentucky, and I'm very, very excited to have her on. Thank you for waiting. I know we have been a little bit late today, 8 minutes, but we appreciate you being here. For those of you joining, let me also go live on Instagram as I'm saying that. Welcome. And those that are here from YouTube, welcome, as well as LinkedIn. I'm going to let Rachel say hello before I read anything about her and our topic. So over to you, Rachel, and then I'll just pull out your bio.
Well, hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a life and spiritual coach, and I'm the author of a book called How to Wear a Crown, a practical guide to knowing your worth. My mission is that of creating world worth, which I do that by teaching individuals how to know their worth, awaken their power, and unlock their full potential. I had a spiritual awakening back in 2014 that prompted me to want to go on my own healing journey. And then through that, I found my purpose and my meaning in the world. And I just wake up every day trying to do that to the best of my ability. On the ground level, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and an introvert, funny enough, with extroversion skills to do things like this. But I'm actually pretty just chill and boring in my real life, like very much a like watch TV and chill at home kind of person.
Well, I would then say maybe the word is you're an ambivert because you probably like being alone, but you can be in company. And so I call myself an ambivert, which is kind of on the. I see we've got Alex here, Alex Ivanov from Boston. Is that somebody that you know?
No, I don't know Alex. Hi,
Okay, so
Alex.
welcome. Welcome, Alex. So today's topic is Own Your Worth, Unlocking Your Personal Power and Potential. And the question we posed in the actual post was, what becomes possible when you truly know your worth, right? Because many of us are walking around with this feeling of imposter syndrome, if we had to label it as such. Many of us are feeling we're not deserving, we don't belong, we're not good enough. So, this is such a big topic, right? We didn't put much in the actual post copy, but it's a monumental topic to be discussing. And I can't wait to take this journey with you, Rachel. So, we're going to be exploring how we're embracing your value and how that can transform the way you think, lead, in life. Now, that's what I've written. But as I said to Rachel, we can say what we say on the post, but we will be intuitively guided in one another's energy on what comes up in the moment. And so bear with us, and we will most certainly endeavor to meet what we've written. But a little bit about Rachel. She has a global mission to help people own their worth, their power, and potential so that they can align with their spiritual purpose. And I get goosebumps around that because if we're not spiritual beings, and what's that saying? We're spiritual beings having a human experience. So, as we can imagine, the salience of that is massive. And her view is that this will create a planet full of humans who are capable of making the positive impact they were born to make in the world. So, Rachel, you shared with us very early on in your introduction, you had a spiritual awakening, so
I
that was
did.
your quest, your call to adventure. Do you want to start there or wherever you feel called to start sharing from?
I guess that's a good place to start because that's where it started for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, October 13th, 2014, I had a spiritual awakening. I call it my lightning bolt moment because it was very much like God was like, stop everything you're doing and look, this is what's going on. And I suddenly became aware of a lot of things that there's no logical reason why I should know. Um, so that's kind of how I describe a spiritual experience to somebody, or spiritual awakening to somebody who hasn't had one. It's a sudden realization, a sudden knowing of an, a massive amount of information that there's no logical reason for you to know. And I relate them a lot to NDEs, people who have the near death experiences, because as I've watched stories of people that have NDEs, they're very much the same sort of vibe, except for that I did not lose consciousness and I didn't you know, I didn't die. I was in wake, full consciousness when this experience happened to me. But what it looks like is there's a whole past life review where everything that you've done up until that moment you take a look at, and you see kind of like how that your actions impacted those around you and rippled out into affecting the world. And then you get this future life preview where here's all the infinite multiple possibilities of what you could be doing, if and how you have to move forward from here on out in order to line up with a higher possible pathway. And then when I was in that moment where I was shown here's all the things you could do, I asked which one will I have the most impact on people? Like where I want the one, I think my words were, I want the one where I help the most people. Because there were so many different options, but one of them I got to help the most people on the planet. And I said, I want that one. And then it was like, okay, back to the earth. And I had made my choice, and then I got divine guidance on how to move forward. And that started with me. That started with me fixing me healing me. And so that's what I did.
Rachel, that's such a audacious ask or choice that you made, because, impacting as many people is one, other than it being audacious, it's also probably quite scary, because you needing to step up into a newer version, and so be the belief of, is it possible? Can I do this? What was sitting with you in those moments as you had the awakening? Because were you at the stage of knowing that you were worthy yet, or did you need to cultivate that along the way?
I did not. I felt absolutely worthless. At that moment, I completely hated myself. I did not know how to put it in those words at that time, but that was the state of being that I was in. That was the relationship that I had with myself. I didn't care about myself. I didn't care if I lived or died. But those were not conscious thoughts of mine. That was just what was in my energy field that I didn't know how to express yet, and what I came to learn as I embarked on my own healing journey. So I just remember feeling very desperate to live a different way. I knew that I didn't enjoy life. I knew that I wasn't happy. I knew that a lot of things needed to change, and that I wasn't making decisions or living a life that was creating the life that I desired. I knew that it wasn't lining up and creating what I wanted. So, but when I saw the options, that's what felt like the most meaningful thing to do after seeing the repercussions of what I had done in the preview. It was like, oh, I've just done a whole lot of like hurting people and messing things around with my energy, and I made impact. That's the part that helps you learn your power. When you look back at your life and you realize that you've hurt people because you were careless with your energy, then you still realize that you have power. Even if you utilized it in a negative way, even if you utilized it in a harmful way, that's still power. And then at that point, that made me realize, oh, so I do have this power thing. I am making changes. I'm not useless. I'm not worthless. I'm making changes in the world. They're just not the type that I want to make. That's not what I would have chosen if I was aware, if I was awake, if I was privy to what was going on this whole time. And I was like, what do I do now? Like, I was like panicked with God. I said, what do I do now? How do I fix it? First of all, the damage that I've done. And that was part of the experience as well. You got to clean up your mess first. You've got to go heal some hearts and tell some people you're sorry and things like that will help mend. You can correct and clean up the energetic mess that you've left in the world. And then from there on out, from that foundation, then you start creating a positive ripple effect of change.
So Rachel, I mean, was this at age 14 And at what point did you start to gain insight and the wisdom and the depth of that wisdom that I need to make amends, because we don't have that depth and wisdom as we're going through the dark night of the soul experience. So at what point did you realize I have got to go and clean up my mess, as you say?
Well, it was 2014. I was not 14. I was
Oh,
24
2014.
or so. 24. Yeah, the year was
Mm.
2014, and it when I realized I harmed people. I grew up in a like Christian type family, not super hard practicing, very not very
Mm.
strict on the practice, but I knew about forgiveness and I knew about apologies and I knew how to say I was sorry. It just was a very uncomfortable experience, and I didn't realize that there was that many people that I had affected negatively along my journey that I needed
Yeah.
to make amends with. But then I was taught that through I went and I sought support, counseling, therapy, support groups, and I went to a school of metaphysics that also helped me a lot. But I
Yes.
learned to meditate on my own each and every day. Um, a lot of it started with just being intuitively led on what to do to heal myself, which was grounding in the earth. I
Yeah.
remember being guided to that. I did not know that grounding was a thing. I had no awareness of these things, but I could hear God speaking to me clearly for the first time in my
Mm.
life. Or maybe I was just not ignoring it for the first time in my life. Maybe a
Uh-huh.
little bit of
Uh-huh.
both. Much much clearer, but also I think that I had been hearing it and going, whatever, I'm going to do what I want. And
Yeah.
then I decided to listen and follow that, what we call in my book, the still small voice, and in Christianity, the still small voice. But um,
Mm.
the spiritual awakening also led me down a much different pathway when it came to spirituality.
Yeah.
And I stopped adhering very like strictly to, you know, religion, or I realized that there was so much more beyond like what I had been taught, that there was a lot of truth to what I had been taught, but there was also just
Mm.
more. And
Yeah.
so I remember feeling very led and just surrendering to that voice and listening and doing what I was told, practicing being obedient to God, if you will. And one of the first things was go outside. I woke up one morning and was like, go outside, take your shoes off, put your feet on the ground. And I was like, why do I got to go outside without shoes? Like, that was like my level of conscious awareness with spirit at that time. I was like, why do you want me to go outside without shoes? This is weird. And then, but I was like, okay, I call myself a bratty child of God, because that was kind of the dynamic for a while, because it was like I was such like a baby in my spiritual
Oh.
journey. But so I'd just be like, what? Why? Like a little kid. And then like, okay though. Fine, I
Well,
will. And so I went outside, I put my feet in the grass, and then I had this incredible experience where I felt Mother Earth for the first time in my life, and like not for the first time, I actually reunited, because as a child I was connected, and then we
mhm.
get disconnected and separated over time. But
Of
yeah.
course we do. I love the fact that one, you don't take yourself so seriously, and two, there's such a beautiful vulnerability and sincere honesty within you, that you first acknowledge that you messed up and you needed to clean up that mess. Not many people do that. For the most part, we love to stay in this victim consciousness. This is happening to me, and it's everyone's the problem and I'm not the problem. So it takes a lot of conviction for you to get to this point. Before we move further, I just want to acknowledge there's a few beautiful comments for you from Munir. Great discussion about gratitude. Really appreciate your communication. It's realistic about gratitude. Great program. Gratitude relates empiricism. Now, forgive me, but I don't know what that word even means. Do you know what that word
What is
means? Empiricism. Munir, you're going to
emphasis?
have to help us out here a bit because I don't know. And I'm a
That?
wordy person, but I don't know what that means. It's positive thinking that developing gratitude. Yes.
Oh,
Okay, so we'll come back to that word. And then while welcome Keen, I see Keen has joined us on Instagram, and I will look at YouTube in a bit. So spirituality, you have highlighted something also important. There's a monumental difference between being religious and being spiritual. And I think there's such a misnomer around this. And more than that, religion sometimes leads to conformity and you know in a system, and it doesn't allow you to be free and liberated and open and be united, right? I feel certainly from my own experience, the moment you segment it only to the religious parts around it, you miss the opportunity to connect meaningfully with yourself at that spiritual level and also broadly with others. Can you share with us a little bit more in terms of that differentiators between the two?
yeah, absolutely. So the way that I see it is that the religion is the practice of connecting with God, and then the spirituality is the connection with God, right? That is the enlightenment. That's the goalpost. And the practices have been, I believe, what people have found to work for them in making that connection with God and achieving enlightenment and raising their vibration. And then it's sort of like the packaged version of, here's how you do this too. Here's how you did what I did. But at the end of the day, not everybody's going to have the same result from the same practices. And actually, we can have the adverse effect if I'm trying to adhere to somebody else's practices that worked for them, when God has a whole different set of practices that I'm supposed to do, because I'm a unique individual person and I'm a unique spiritual being, and God knows who I am and what's going to work for me. And instead of following my divine pathway, I'm trying to follow yours. So I'm actually bringing myself more into separation from God than I am into alignment with God by trying to mimic your spiritual experience. And what I've seen and what I know to be true is that adhering to the set of practices, you can still, and I'm just going to be like blunt with the way that I say this, but you can still be completely trash on the inside. And then having that appearance of it creates a presentation of spiritual, or good person, or whatever these labels that we want to slap on it. It creates the appearance of that out in the world, and then so you get to feel like you're doing a really good job at being a spiritual person because you've checked off your list of, I did all the spiritual things, did it, and now I'm a spiritual person. But then on the inside, you can still feel completely like trash. So, and then with spirituality, I think a lot of times the appearance of doesn't quite look as pretty and not as digestible for other people. However, you're going to feel really great and you're going to feel really connected, but other people might be saying, hey, you're doing this wrong and you're doing that wrong, and that's not how we do it, and you're drifting away from God, and you'll get all this type of feedback, but you'll be like, but you won't care because you're so secure in your relationship with God that you're like, no, I'm not. Me and God are good. Don't worry about me,
Rachel.
God are good.
I mean, I can relate to what you're saying there. I mean, you spoke about, I think in another way of describing it, symbolically looking the part. So my faith is of the Islamic faith.
Yes.
And so, yes, I'm meant to wear the hijab, right? And it is a compulsory requirement of the faith. And so a lot of times I find myself being judged in different environments that symbolically is saying, but you need to be wearing the head cover.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, spiritually, and in terms of my purification of my heart, My heart is pure, my humanitarian ways is pure, and I connect with people in such a meaningful way that they feel safe and they feel heard and understood and acknowledged. Now, for me, that would be my spiritual gift. And I'm not going to symbolically try and dress the part, as you say, and then inside it looks like trash, to steal your words.
Yeah, I
Because
love
that's the reality. There's the spiritual bypassing. I have a friend who's a psychologist, and she always says there's this thing also in different faiths, not just in the Islamic faith,
that.
about spiritual bypassing. So let's pray it away. Let's go according to this scripture. But that's not only the only way that one's got to live. And I know we are digressing a bit on the spiritual realm here, but we did say we're going to try and hold ourselves honest to bring that back to worthiness. So
Yeah.
let's bring it back and tie that back, because you've said it, that when you are content and safe and you have cultivated such a meaningful relationship with your creator, with source, with the divine, and you've come back to that divinity, that source within yourself, there's this oneness, right? So it doesn't actually matter what the society or external um, feedback is, because you're not seeking the validation. So, how did you move forward knowing there were naysayers on your journey, on your spiritual journey? And who were people that was also on your side? Who were your spiritual guides or your mentors along the way?
Well, I had to care more about what my creator thought about me than what people thought about me.
Yes.
And through my spiritual experience, I did when I realized that, I believed in my creator, I believed in God, I had faith that God was real, but actually meeting and knowing instead of just having faith and believing right in something that you like, because I can know that I know that Paris Hilton exists in the world, but I don't know her. I haven't met her, but I know she exists. It's kind of like the same difference, right? Like, I knew that God existed and believed it enough because I had evidence that that was real, but I did not have a one-on-one connection and relationship with God. But once I did, then I was like, oh, I have a bigger responsibility now,
Yep.
with that closeness, with that oneness, to take what God is thinking about me into consideration first and foremost, above all else. And I remember, just like I kind of joked about being the bratty child of God. It was, in those moments of God tell me to do something, like, oh my, but oh, you know how people are gonna look at me, and it'd be like, "Would make your choice though? Do you care?" And
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
how will this play out, and what will be the outcome? And so, I just tried to stay like really close, and
Mm.
talk to God throughout the day, so that I would manage to get through those moments where and it wasn't always easy. There
No.
was a lot of times where I had to do it shaking, do it crying, do what God
Mhm.
was telling me to do, with my heart racing, knowing that I was about to get judged. But
Mhm.
I believe that, my mother was always a good supporter of mine.
Mhm.
Um, and even if there was people along the way that did not support that 100%, there was always a person, even if it was a stranger, to
So,
validate that I was on the right track. Like, God would send people. So there was always a person to validate my experience.
I connect to what you're saying there. There's always people, and yet we call it. I have a group which we call ourselves. Well, my friend calls it the sacred companionship or the sacred sisterhood,
Mm.
right? And when you have these like-minded people that are on a similar journey, even though they They may be at different levels within that journey, but there's just a witnessing and an acceptance of it. There's no judgment. There's radical empathy and compassion and kindness, right? And I mean, gosh, that's all the world needs right now, is not to be judging one another and to come together as one. But when we bring this back to worthiness, when that relationship is robust with your creator, nobody and nothing can knock that relationship with God that you have, so much so that your worth and deservingness. I learned this from somebody also in my journey. She said there's a difference between being worthy but also feeling deserving of.
Mhm.
And I listened to her when she said that, and I was like, I didn't quite understand. She says, you know your worth, but do you really believe you deserve success or a relationship or the money or whatever the deservingness is? And I think that when that relationship with God is cultivated in such a strong way, that nothing will shake that foundation, because you're not living and crafting this path ahead for the applause and praise from the external sense. You
Yeah.
really are looking at, what is my legacy? What is the impact that I want to leave? And you've so beautifully said, I want to touch as many people. Did you put a number to it, or did you just say infinite amount of people?
Infinite. The whole world.
Infinite.
I mean, it's like shoot for the moon and you'll grab some stars on the way down,
Mm.
whatever that saying is. But, it was, I knew that it was a bigger mission than I could do by myself. Right. So that was
Yes.
when the book came along. I was in the park coaching a client, and I was had done this self-worth work for myself, and I
Mm.
was using that to teach and coach. And I remember catching myself repeating the same things. It's like, man, this is like the 20th time I've said this week. This is getting a little redundant. And there's been so many different people, and with all these different backgrounds and different mental health diagnosis and all these different experiences, but this is the thing that's helping all of them. And so
Mm.
when I got done with
Mm.
that session, I continued to walk in the park for a little while and talk to God. And I remember I said a prayer. And when I say prayer, it's just the way that I talk to God, which sounds a whole lot like me talking to you anymore. I don't. It's like, oh, Lord Jesus. Like, it's like I just talk. And so I was like, God, I see this problem's really big. Like, because this is a lot of different types of people. And this is just here in my little rural town in Kentucky. And so surely this is happening in other states in the United States. And then is it happening like in other countries and all over the world? Like, is this, I see that this problem is probably a lot bigger than I realize. And when I think about my schedule, I had to start thinking limitlessly and transcend that time and that space, because I looked at my schedule. I'm like, okay, Rachel's got a 40-hour work week or whatever, and I can put this many clients a day on my schedule. I can even start doing some groups, and then I'll get them from here in Kentucky and maybe a little bit from there, and maybe I can do some stuff virtual. But how much one-on-one time, if I'm limiting myself to my personal time and my body, what my physical, you know, limitations are, how many people can I really reach? Because it would be a number, a small number. It's just a little flicker of who all makes up the collective of humanity. And that made me really sad, because I felt like I had a massive solution to this massive problem, but I was only helping a few people with it. And I said, God, I see that this problem is so much bigger than I realized. And you and I, we've done this thing, we've made this work here, we've came up with this thing, and it's working. It worked for me, and it's working for them. And so if there's a way to do this bigger, I said, I'm game. And that was my prayer. And then I left the park, I just said I'm down. Like I'm game. Let's do it. If that's your will, if that's what you want for me, I'll do it. And then it was about 2 weeks later and I had just had a baby, and I was working an entry level job in mental health and life coaching on the side. And that's when the idea of the book was divinely given to me. I was walking through my hallway and I saw a flash in my mind. I could see the book cover, and then the words just started pouring through my head of the introduction. It was, "Hi, my name is Rachel and I wear a crown," but not an actual crown. I'm talking about a metaphysical accessory that you take with you wherever you go. And I could hear it. I scrambled to grab my laptop and pulled up a Word doc and just started writing what I could hear pouring into my consciousness. And then I realized that God wanted me to write a book. And I said, how am I supposed to write a book? What do I know about? I don't know about how to be an author. I have no resources. I have no funds. I live in Shepherdsville, Kentucky. I make $13 an hour. I just had a baby. How am I supposed to do this? Like, world's worst timing. I mean, I trust divine timing, but serious, like right now. And I said, how am I supposed to do this? And God said 16 and 16. I said, what does that mean? And he said, 16 days. You'll have a rough draft, and 16 weeks from that date, you'll be a published author.
Wow! Now do tell.
Lofty goal.
Do tell. Have you got the book there with you to show us the cover or something?
I do. This is my teacher copy that I use when I teach. So it's got all these little. I put all the little tabs so I can quickly find places.
Show it to us again. How to wear a crown.
How to wear a crown. A practical guide to knowing your worth. And 16 and 16, when I asked what that meant, and he said that was how it was going to be. And then then that's when I got grounded and logical. And I said, okay, I looked up, I remember Googling, like, I knew it was a book to help people. So it's like, how many words is a typical like self-help book? Like, I needed a word count goal. I knew I needed to take a big goal and break it down into small objectives. Yeah. I had learned how to do that through helping myself. So I was like, okay, so big goal, break it down into small objectives. How many words is a self-help book? So I just had like some kind of goalpost, and I took that number, I divided it by 16. That gave me how many words I needed to try to hit each day. And I would just pray each day and say, okay, God, I'm ready. Like when you are for today's word count. And I wrote every day, and 16 days later I had a rough draft, and it almost felt like it like made itself. Like I would write portions, because I'm very ADHD. I don't like me being structured stuff. Like that's really not even me. And I did not write it in order. It was like things would come out, and then I'd be like, oh, that needs to be in chapter 1. And then I'd be on chapter 12 and like move a paragraph to chapter 1 and knew exactly where it was supposed to go. And that's how it felt. It felt so intuitive, and like I was just being worked through the whole time. It was a beautiful experience and a healing experience. And I bawled crying, and I could see people. I could feel the energies of people who were already predestined to change their lives through this work. And I would cry because I could feel that people in the future, women in the future that I hadn't even met, were going to heal. And I could feel domestic violence, and I could feel trauma, and I could feel childhood sexual abuse, and I could feel all these different situations, and I could feel the energies of the individuals. And now I call them soul clients. And that's what who's my next soul client? Because as I meet the women, I'm like, oh, you were that one.
Wow. I'm getting goosebumps.
Oh, you were that one. And even yesterday I had that experience. I put it on my Facebook. I said, I just met my next soul client, because I met her. We walked by each other, and she said, you look familiar. Where do I know you from? And she started naming some places. I was like, no, must not be me. I don't know. And then later it came up and just kind of got orchestrated. And now she's going to be doing my program with me. And she said,
Rachel.
I knew. She said, you looked familiar. That's why you felt so familiar. I said, yeah. And I told her exactly what I just told you about how the clients are predestined. Like God already knew what he was doing. I just have to keep showing up.
Oh man, I've got so much questions I want to ask and so many directions I want to go. And I'm like, oh, I need to keep this focused. But what's coming up for me is, we all talk about manifestation. I have this view around walking by faith and leading with prayer. I used to feel like I need to hustle and push and pull, and I'm in such a different energy, but it comes back to worthiness. It comes back to everything that you've shared thus far, the spiritual journey and that relationship you have with God. Now, talk to us about what are some of the things you've done in terms of the woo-woo manifestation, because everybody talks around seeing is not believing, believing is when you can see it. Who do we need to become in order to attract the right opportunities? And I'm not just talking from a business perspective. Sometimes we have people on our journeys, and when we have these spiritual enlightenments or breakthroughs, we do lose some people along the way because there's no more resonance. That frequency is just simply not aligned.
Mm-hmm.
So, what frequency does one need to consider being at in order to, in politically correct terms, call it manifest the relationships that we want, the money that we want, the opportunities that exist, or to write a book as you've just done?
I think the frequency would be trust.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yes.
trust and surrender.
Mm.
But also, like you were talking about earlier, like deserving. And
Yes.
there's a chapter in my book called The Evolution of Worthiness. I want to kind of like ping back to what you were saying earlier about the deserving being different than knowing that you're worthy, that knowing
Mm-hmm.
that knowing that I'm worthy is like the $100 bill. Okay, so I have a $100 bill
Mm.
and I know that this $100 bill has value and I can spend it on something, but it's
Mm.
what am I going to spend it on is kind of the deserving.
Yes.
What is this? What would be the best way to utilize this $100? Okay, I know it has $100 worth of value, but there's a ton of stuff I could do with it. What is the priority? What do I value the most that I want to spend that money on? And I think that that's a little bit like ourselves. And
Mm.
in my book, with the evolution of the worthiness, I talk about learning. We learn our inherent worth, right? That $100 bill is equal to $100 bill no matter what has happened to it, right? We can step on it,
Yes.
stomp on it, do all the things. It's still worth $100 no matter what.
Mm.
And so are we, right? That's our inherent value. So that's the
Yes.
baseline, that's the foundation, is that we are worthy no matter what. But then as we build upon that, as we grow and evolve, we learn, we start getting that confidence, we start getting that power. And it started with little things for me. Like I realized, I grew up in poverty. I realized that I was making choices about things that I would purchase based on old money
Wiring.
mindsets. And
Mm.
like I would just automatically get the cheapest thing instead of the thing that I actually wanted. And it started with little moments like that, like at the grocery store and being like, wait a second, Rachel, that was not, why did you just do that? Why did you just pick that? That's not what you wanted. You deserve, it's literally $2 more. You deserve to have the one that you wanted. And so just these little baby step climbs of, wait, no, I deserve that. Other people buy that. Other people get that. What makes you
Sure.
any different? You also deserve this little tiny thing. And then that grows and then when you make those conscious choices to purchase the different type of whatever at the store because
Mm.
that was the one that you truly desired, that affirms to yourself that you are deserving of the things that you are worthy of.
Mhm.
And that's not just with things financial, right? This is, wait a
Yes.
second, I'm getting treated really poorly by this person. I don't deserve that. What I actually deserve is this kind of treatment at a minimum. And then you create a new standard for what you deserve. It just happens so slow, and it builds. And so that's why that chapter about the evolution of your worthiness is so important in the book, because it is an ever evolving process. And when I discovered my worth, what I was accepting because of what I thought I deserved at that moment in time was still like, it was the bare minimum. And
Sure.
then I had to grow to understand that there was more that I was deserving of too. And as we grow and evolve, what we desire changes, and our thinking expands, and more become like, I can't even know that something's possible for my life until I see evidence that that thing is possible, until I've met so and so and I see that she's done it before, and then I go, oh, that's a possibility. Oh, well, cool. Let me start thinking about that that's possible for me too. And then I have to get in alignment with it. That's, I'm deserving of that too.
Sure.
But it's trust and it's surrender. I have to surrender to that journey of worthiness. I have to remember my inherent worth. And then I have to surrender to God to help me grow. I just say a little prayer of like, okay, God, I desire that. I desire that. So a lot of it's rooted in desire as well. I desire that. Help me learn that I'm worthy of that. Walk me through
Oh,
whatever it
that's
is that I need
powerful.
to figure out that I'm worthy and deserving of that. Because right now I don't feel like that, but I desire that, and I'd like to match the frequency of knowing that I deserve that. And
So
then I trust that I'm going to go on that
ask for
journey.
it. Listen, so I'm hearing you say, ask for what you want,
Yeah.
and then go for it. And this thing around trust and surrender, we're not talking lip servicing. I need to trust and surrender. We're talking the embodiment of trust and surrender. In our faith, we also have something called, the Arabic term is tawakkul, and it essentially means handing over the trust. But it doesn't mean you don't do what you need to do. You still got to, as we say, tie your camel, still go do the work. You
Yeah.
still need to do and take the steps to get there and to go and achieve the result that you're looking for, because we have choice, right? Rachel, I want to ask you something in terms of your book. Which of the chapters was one of your most life-defining moments or experiences that you've reflected upon in the book? So, a life-defining experience that has made it into the chapters. And then, what is your most favorite chapter of that book?
Oh, that's a big question. Okay, so my most defining moment. So I'll read, I don't know what you call it, but there's just a little piece in the very beginning before the book even starts, before the introduction, where it was like, who do I want to write this to? You know, who is this book for? And there's a couple of different moments that I realized who I was writing it for. The first one is the dedication. And it says, for my younger self, the little girl, the version of me who was capable, had so much potential, and was so beautiful inside and out, yet had absolutely no idea what she was worth. For all the people who can't see their own value, who come into alignment with this book, I wrote it for you. Just for you. You are so special, so important, and so worthy. And yes, this book is dedicated to you. So feel free to sign your name in the blank. And I have a portion where when you purchase it, you read this and you claim it as being written directly to yourself. Because like I told you earlier, it was a preordained, like this was predestined for certain souls. And so it was written for specific people. That's 100% true. But it was also written to heal me. to
Mhm.
quantum healing, right? To heal the little girl inside of me that didn't understand that she was worthy, that
Sure.
I wish I could go back in time and give her this then. And
Mm.
and that's possible too, right? Because once we transcend those limitations of time and space,
Mhm.
there's, I call it like time travel therapy, time machine therapy or something like that I come up with
The
those.
triple T effect.
Like, get in your time machine, let's go back, let's give her what she needs. Okay, let's just go
Yeah.
back in time and give her what she needs. So I love that piece, because it, I think my development as a child and who I was, what I needed that I didn't get early on in childhood development, was a crucial part of my story that
Sure.
doesn't really get written into the book, but is a reason. And
Sure.
then the next piece is, says, to all of those who broke my spirit,
Mm.
I have spent a lot of time, energy, and love putting it back together, and I added some extra things. See, I rebuilt my soul into a spirit that cannot be broken by people like you. One that sits up so high, I feel invincible. My soul sings a song incomprehensible to ears like yours. My soul soars because when you broke me, it let the light in.
Oh my gosh. You're making me tear up, and I never tear up that often. So your words are making me tear up because we've had so many people that break our spirit. And as a mom today, I find that those conditioned beliefs and narratives somehow sometimes slips in, even in your own parenting unconsciously, where you don't mean to break any one of your kids' spirit, but you somehow did. And more recently, I had to send all three of my kids a letter, well, a virtual letter as such, to say, hey, listen, I was you once. And so know that you are loved, know that you are worthy, know that you belong, know that you are beautiful just the way that you are. And so those words that you've written there really touch the core of me, because we have to be very mindful and aware and become more conscious of our words and our energy and how we show up in the world. And as much as part of your story didn't make it into the book, energetically, you have given so much of yourself in the book. And that was beautiful, just to be able to receive that in this moment. So thank you,
Thank
Rachel. I can't wait to actually get my hands on your book, because what it is saying that you have just read to us, this dedication is a reclamation, right? And it's not a reclamation of power and being overpowering. It's a reclamation of your sovereignty. It's a reclamation of your divinity. And so the other part that I connect meaningfully to is that I did not receive the love, the acceptance, the belonging as a kid myself. And so the entire reason why I started this segment was revisiting my own life and saying, what do I need to do? I consciously uncoupled during COVID from my 18-year marriage. And the caption shifting from grudge to grit, grace, and gratitude was born from I released every single person who broke my spirit. So that's why that touched the core of me in the way that it did.
you.
Because when we release those individuals, whether they intentionally or unintentionally or consciously or unconsciously harmed us, we have to, here's another form of surrender and forgiveness that is required, because forgiveness is for us,
Yeah. And it's
right?
taking our power back. So a
Yeah.
lot of the journey of awakening our power is retrieving it from the
Mm-hmm.
places we lost it,
Yeah.
from the people who took it from us, saying,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, no, you don't get to have that. That was mine."
Mm-hmm.
And reclaiming those pieces of yourself and the power that you lost when you were hurt.
Yes. And that essence, the beautiful essence of our inner child, we were always pure. If we think about, we again, regardless of the faith that we come from, if we come from source,
Mm-hmm.
that pureness, everybody has it within them. And
Yes.
so that divine essence is just for us to reconnect to that version. And the healing part that you spoke about earlier on, healing that version is more than just the dealing with the pain part. It's saying the pain was necessary in pursuit of the purpose I now lead and live with.
Yeah.
So tell us about those pains of the past, or I call it the wounds of the past. I also call it the wow factor. I call
Mm-hmm.
it that because there's wisdom in observing our wounds, and there's wonderment in overcoming our wounds, right? And we are all warriors overcoming our wounds, right?
Absolutely.
Not warriors in the sense of warring. We are warriors. We are heroes. Tell me some of those pains that have now become this purpose-led life for you.
I like to refer to it as the human condition
Mm-hmm,
because, and I always say, nobody comes to Earth and gets out unscathed,
mm-hmm,
right? We
mm-hmm,
This world is suffering as an inherent part of the three
right.
dimensional experience, and
Mm-hmm,
some of the things that I overcame were trauma, addiction, mental illness,
mm-hmm.
um, betrayal. Just
Ooh,
to
yeah.
to sum up a few, losing trust, um,
Mm-hmm,
feeling invisible, feeling unseen,
mm-hmm,
feeling misunderstood. Um, but I think that what is true for all people is, pain and suffering are an inherent part of our experience as humans when we choose to come to Earth. We're signing up for that,
mm-hmm.
and we collect all this pain along the journey. And that piece about when you broke me, it let the light in. We when we get to that state where we're so broken that we shatter
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
into we are fragmented into all of these pieces. Our consciousness gets fragmented and it's all scattered all over the place, is kind of how I see it, like the Kinzuki
Yeah.
bowl.
Yes, I was about to say that.
We're like literally on the same page. The
Hold
Kinzuki
that thought,
bowl.
hold that thought,
Okay.
hold that thought. I'm going to
Do you
take it
have
out. We
one?
did one recently.
Oh my God, you have one.
I never get up from my desk, but we did one
Stop.
recently at a retreat,
Oh my
and
God.
it was just so amazing. I mean, I had my peer sisters, they were doing different versions, but there's an Arabic name, Islamic name in terms of God's different names, which is Al Jabbar. But not to
Yeah.
get into it, it was amazing to see how these fragmented pieces, because somehow I knocked mine, but I almost perfectly knocked it. As you can see, there weren't too many pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But what was interesting for me in that experience, and I'm going to give you a chance to come back,
Yeah.
is that everybody had their different version of it. Some broke so hard that there were like lots of pieces and they had to try and get it back together. And some decided to put all these different beautiful things um, to decorate and accessorize it. And for me, it was no, I'm okay to be broken in these pieces and it's okay to not feel alone. So I want to come back to you in terms of your definition of Kitsuki because it was such a profound experience for me. And it's not so long ago, it's just a few months ago we did this.
Wow. That's blowing my mind. I'm like, I can't believe she had one right there. Yeah, so it's that process of being broken. We all experience that, just like you said, in our own ways. Whether some of us might have gotten cracked and split in half. Some of us might have broken into a few pieces. Some of us might have broken into a zillion pieces. Some of us might have had so many little, like, some of us might have been shattered into dust. But all of that is possible to reunify into the whole. And then, like the process that you went through of doing your bowl, and you said that other people had different ways of styling it. If we weren't broken, we didn't get the opportunity to rebuild, to put ourselves back together in this new, unique, beautiful way that we want to, right? We get to bring our conscious, creative intelligence into the experience of our growth through that reunification process and become something that we would have never been before.
I think you and I could continue this chat indefinitely. It feels like we're just sitting next to each other or we're just in another room. But I mean, we
just come sit on the bed with me and let's chit chat for like the next 7 hours. Yeah, let's cuddle.
So, right? I mean, a lot of what you spoke about is so resonant for me because that betrayal, but also coming back to how you started the segment on the way that I showed up with that betrayal. I actually ended up trying to betray the one who betrayed me. And I was like, wow, I acted completely out of character because of the pain of that betrayal. I found myself acting worse than the perpetrator, to try and get back at the person. So it's interesting that the journey, I have found that through loss, through hardships, through difficulty, through the suffering, it is only that has made me the version that I am today. It is only through no longer having the shame of admitting that I was worse than the perpetrator that tried to betray me. When you no longer attach the shame to it, when you can speak openly, right? So those are parts of the way I deal with it, is that I want to give others an invitation or a platform to come on here and say, I don't have any shame of my past, of my environment or my upbringing or my heritage or my ancestral heritage. I am me and I'm happy, and this is who I'm supposed to be, and this is the impact that I want to leave. Now for you, Rachel, in the last 3 minutes, what's next? We know you want to impact infinite people. You've written one book. You're truly listening and you're intuitively guided. What are you feeling intuitively guided to next?
Well, I'm getting ready to graduate in December with my master's in counseling. So I have a master's of consciousness from the Louisville School of Metaphysics. I told you I went to a metaphysics school. I have a bachelor's in psychology. I've been a substance use counselor. I'm the life and spiritual coach and the author of this book. And I created a nonprofit organization called World Worth Inc. And
WW.
The icon is the world with a little crown on it. And it will encompass, because I felt like there were so many different ways that helping people with their worth shows up. And I want to be able to just do that to the best of my ability. But that would be how to wear a crown in my coaching. That's the way that I do this on an individual level. But then with World Worth, that's the way I want to have this organization and employ people. And I went back to school for my master's because I wanted to be, there's so many people here in my local community that want to work with me, but are like, can you take insurance? And I had to say no. And so I was like, let me open that doorway to where I can take insurance and I'll be a licensed therapist, and I can help people in that way with insurance. Coaching will always be available, but then I also want to own, I want to have the private practice and own this organization where I employ people to go out and do all the different things, because there's so many, all the way from feeding, clothing people, those ground level things, to teaching the actual information, but really that footwork, right, of getting out there into communities and just being of service. and doing that all over the world in whatever ways possible, because I kept saying, well, I can't keep creating a new business for everything that I want to do to help people. So I was like, let's just have like a nonprofit, and then we'll have like teams and like smaller divisions. We'll have like a group of people that do this and a group of people that work to do that. Because I wanted to help people in all the ways, but I know that I can't do that by myself. I know it's bigger than me. I know that I'm just one person, and this is a bigger mission. So I think I want to work to. I'm going to graduate in December. I'll start my private practice. I'll add that piece to the equation, and then I actually started World Worth, and then realized I was really going to need that master's degree and that next level licensure if I wanted to have full autonomy over the business, because I could have hired out that role, but I wanted to be that role so that I had autonomy over the organization. And so with that, I would say that's the direction that we're moving in, to expand into that nonprofit work, much more like freely giving, and just seeing what all God leads me to do. I don't know what all God will lead me to do with that, but I've actually got several different books in the works. I've been making music lately. That was always my childhood dream. So that's been a very healing experience for me, because I didn't know that my life would take me down the pathway of becoming like a therapist and an author and all of these things. But I always loved music as a healing means for myself, and that was always my biggest dream, and it was like my bucket list thing. Like, I'm gonna make one album before I die, just so that like I know I did it, so I won't have regrets.
Yeah.
And then it just opened that part of me back up that was like, oh my God, this is so healing. I remember why I did this. I remember why I loved this. And so I've been doing that again, and just playing, having fun, me being more ease and more peace and more joy, and just seeing, I don't think that I could ever in this lifetime do all the things that I want to do for the world, but I'm available every day to do as much as I can for the world. So
Beautiful.
I'm just I'm ready and available for whatever God has next for me. I'm going to continue to be obedient and listen, because that's been working.
No, I think you would absolutely love my very close friend who's also a therapist, and she's also in this contemplation around growing and scaling in the way that you are. And she's extremely intuitive and always listening to the downloads, and she designs her programs based on those downloads, and she listens. And so I get the sense of her also wanting to go and do her master's, get the same reason, get more people so she can get the insurance cards, because people want to use their medical insurance, right? But so firstly, congratulations on really listening and going to pursue your dreams, both the masters and singing, and reconnecting with that part of you. In our last part of closing out, what would be the call to action you'd like to leave our audience with? In other words, where can they get involved with this noble cause of yours? And any other golden nugget you want to leave them with before we say goodbye? And we're going to say goodbye, and I'm going to end the live, but you can stay on just for a short debrief afterwards. So I'll leave you with the last word.
Okay, so you can find How to Wear a Crown on Amazon, but you can also get links to everything I do from my website. That's the best hub spot to go for everything, which is just my name. So it's easy to remember. It's www.racheldgreenwell.com. I also like to joke that I'm Googleable now. I'm like, honey, I tell my husband I'm Googleable, because you can just type my name in the browser, in your search engine, and I'll pop up and you'll find me, and you can see other things I do. And apparently AIable now, so that's the new thing. So AIable, wow. He was like, honey, when I look at you on AI, on my AI, you're in there. So you can AI.
I'm gonna try that.
That's a big deal. And so all of those things are available, and support at racheldgreenwell.com if you need any help navigating any of that. Secondly, what I would leave everybody with, there's the three things I want to leave everybody with, which is that to know that you're worthy, you're powerful, and you're full of potential. And I challenge you all to say it with me, because you have to claim it for yourself. I cannot claim it for you. So I just ask that we do that affirmation together, and we say, I am worthy, I am
I am
powerful,
worthy. I am powerful.
and I am full of potential.
And I am full of potential. Oh, man, that's beautiful. We'll end on that note. Thank you for those that have been here from all different parts of the world. We appreciate you, those that have been here on Instagram. We'll see you again next week, same time, as well as YouTube. And Rachel, please do stay on the live until I end it, and then we'll have our debrief.